A student girl from Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, followed her daily routine of going to the university research laboratory as she did every day. However, on this fateful day, she did not return. She remained missing for 5 days until she was found, lifeless, inside one of the building's server cabins, exactly on her wedding day. This is the story of Annie Lee. Annie Leanne Thu, born on July 3, 1985, in California, United States, is the daughter of Vietnamese parents, Vivian Van Lee and Hoang Le. From an early age, Annie demonstrated a strong commitment to her studies. She consistently excelled academically, earning top grades during childhood and adolescence. Her dedication paid off when, at the beginning of her adulthood, she secured a prestigious scholarship at the University of Rochester in New York. There, Annie majored in biology, complemented by a minor in cell development. After graduating in early 2008 at the age of 22, she was approved for a postgraduate program at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. Her focus was on conducting research and writing a thesis for specialization in diabetes treatment. She'd also written an article for the official Yale Medical School magazine, which was published in February 2009. Annie was romantically involved with a boy named Jonathan Wadowski, a 24-year-old graduate specializing in physics and applied mathematics at Columbia University. The couple had been together for a few years and had set a wedding date for September 13, 2009. While pursuing her postgraduate studies, Annie shared a house with 5 other students. However, on the night of Tuesday, September 8th, just 5 days before her scheduled wedding, she failed to return to her accommodation. This was unusual, as she typically arrived home early and maintained regular communication with her housemates. As Annie was quite close to the other students in the house, and they always communicated with each other regularly, they were concerned when Annie didn't communicate or respond to messages. Her friends attempted to call her, only to find that her phone was turned off. Due to these facts, the friends felt that something was wrong, and at 9 p.m. they contacted the New Haven Police Department and reported her missing. And then, we already know what happened, right? The police asked them to wait a little longer as it was only about 3 hours later than usual. Despite the initial advice to wait a little longer, they remained anxious. By morning, she still wasn't home. They immediately notified the police about the new development. Annie was officially declared missing when investigations commenced that very afternoon. After consulting with her friends, the police went to the university in search of Annie. They realized that the complex was equipped with an extensive network of security cameras. They immediately requested the recordings. The recordings revealed her entering the Amistad building where her research laboratory was located at precisely 10 a.m. on the 8th, but unfortunately, there was no footage of her leaving the building. As the images did not show her leaving, the police closed the entire building for a detailed investigation. The building's security protocols allowed entry to only authorized people with access cards. Consequently, all other students, teachers, and employees who were seen entering and leaving the premises became potential suspects. As investigators identified and questioned them, practically everyone claimed not to have seen Annie that day. Some admitted that they had never met her. The only critical clue provided was from the testimony of Raymond Clark III, a 26-year-old laboratory technician engaged in scientific research within the same building and had a fiancée named Jennifer. Raymond claimed that he saw her leave the building carrying 2 bags of rat food and a notebook, just 15 minutes before he left at 3:45 p.m. This statement soon became suspicious, as he did not know that the police officers knew that Annie, in fact, never left that place. On the second day of the investigation, which was the 10th, FBI agents sprang into action and working with other teams. They gathered a list of evidence, which included a damp sock with bloodstains, a blue disposable glove, and a stained coat. Investigators then went to Annie's apartment to collect her personal belongings, including a toothbrush to be used for DNA testing. That same day, reanalyzing the images, the police saw Raymond leaving the building at the stated time. However, he was wearing different clothing than the one he entered in, which at that time was a white coat identical to the one found. The police obtained search and seizure warrants to collect samples of his DNA, including saliva and hair, as well as his fingerprints. Furthermore, Raymond agreed to take a polygraph test, during which he failed several questions. It is worth noting that polygraph tests, in general, do not definitively incriminate anyone. They serve as supplementary evidence but cannot be relied upon as the sole determining factor in any accusation. Despite an exhaustive search of the entire building, the young woman was not found. On Sunday, sniffer dogs arrived at the scene, and it wasn't long before they honed in on a room that had previously been investigated, but perhaps not thoroughly enough. The dogs led the officers to a room at the very back of the department. Inside, they pointed to one of the building's digital server cabinets. When they opened the closet, amidst a tangle of cables and electronic devices, Annie was found lifeless, with her bra pulled up and her pants down to her knees, exactly on the day scheduled for her wedding. She was sent to the coroner while her clothing underwent forensic analysis. Samples of semen were found on the victim's clothes, in her panties and pants, and some blood was found on her socks. In the body, it was identified that in addition to the jaw and a clavicle being broken, the cause of death was asphyxiation. The news of Annie's disappearance left her fiancé and family in disbelief. Everyone was in shock and desperate for answers. They urgently called on the authorities to understand what had happened. The entire investigation was still under wraps, but of course they already had a potential suspect, Raymond. The police were just waiting for concrete evidence before proceeding with his arrest warrant. On the 17th, exactly 9 days after the crime, the results of the forensic examinations were released. The coat discovered at the scene was indeed Raymond's. Notably, the bloodstains found on the coat, sock, and Annie's pants were a mixture of both the victim's blood and Raymond's. In addition, Raymond's DNA was compatible with the DNA extracted from the semen found on Annie's clothing. Raymond was arrested on the same day. After his arrest, Raymond was held on bail of $3 million, a symbolic amount to ensure that the accused remains in prison while awaiting trial. He appeared in state court on January 26, 2010, where he pleaded not guilty. Several hearings took place that year, and his lawyers realized that proving his innocence was going to be a very difficult task. The prosecution was seeking the death penalty for the defendant. During the hearing in March the following year, 2011, Raymond opted to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. But in relation to the sexual accusation, he invoked what is known as offered plea, which allows the accused to maintain their innocence while acknowledging that the evidence against them is sufficient for a conviction. In other words, the defendant does not admit guilt but accepts the legal consequences. Although this sounds very confusing, and in fact it is, the plea serves as an alternative legal strategy in certain cases. I took some time to find more information about the plea, and I found out that in 1963, a man named Henry Alford had been indicted for first-degree murder in North Carolina. His case unfolded after an altercation with another man, Nathaniel Young, following Alford's encounter with a call girl in a bar. Tragically, hours later, Nathaniel was killed by a shotgun blast. Alford pleaded not guilty. However, at the time, under North Carolina law stipulated that a first-degree murder conviction carried an automatic request for the death penalty, unless the jury declined to impose that penalty, in which case the defendant would receive a life sentence. As the trial approached, Alford made a pivotal decision. He changed his plea from not guilty to a charge of first-degree murder when there is intent to kill to guilty, but specifically to second-degree murder when there is no premeditation or intent to kill. Consequently, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sometime later, the accused appealed and requested a new trial, arguing that he still declared himself innocent and that he only changed his statement because he was intensely advised by his lawyer to plead guilty for fear of the death sentence. As a result, in 1970, the Alford appeal was established to formalize a defendant's guilty plea while acknowledging that it is a strategic choice to avoid the death penalty. By invoking this plea, the defendant recognizes that there is sufficient evidence against them. Therefore, the judge is required to ask the defendant two critical questions as soon as the plea is invoked. First, do you consider it in your best interest to plead guilty? This question ensures that the plea is voluntary and not coerced by third parties. Second, do you understand that with your Alford plea, you will henceforth be treated as guilty, regardless of whether you admit factual guilt? This question is asked to record that upon calling the appeal, the defendant forfeits the right to seek a case review, even if they maintain their innocence. Now that we understand the origin of the Alford plea, let's return to the case at hand. Raymond, fully aware of the compelling evidence against him, chose to plead guilty under the Alford plea, knowing that the existing evidence can prove his guilt. This strategic move allowed him to avoid the death penalty. On June 3, 2010, Raymond was sentenced to 44 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Following the sentence, he had the opportunity to make an official statement. Although he expressed great remorse, he offered no clear explanation regarding his motive for the crime. "I take full responsibility for my actions. I alone am responsible for the death of Annie Lee and causing tremendous pain to all who loved and cared about Annie. I am truly sorry I took Annie away from her friends, her family, and most of all, her fiancé. I have always tried to do the right thing and stay out of trouble, but I failed. I took a life and continued to lie about it while Annie's friends, family, and fiancé sat and waited. I am sorry for putting Annie's family, friends, and fiancé through everything. I really never wanted to harm anyone or cause emotional pain to anyone. All I wanted was to be a good son, a good brother, and a good fiancé. But again, I failed. I blame only myself, and there are no excuses for what I have done. Annie was and will always be a wonderful person, by far a better person than I will ever be in my life. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I ruined lives, and I'm sorry for taking Annie Lee's life." After the court proceedings, Joe Tacopina, Annie's mother's lawyer, expressed dissatisfaction with Raymond's statement. He claimed it was unsatisfactory because the absence of answers or any explanation regarding his actions left many unsettled. Many people argued that the sentence should be life imprisonment precisely because he was the only person who could shed some light on the crime's motivation, and apparently that may remain forever unsolved. But, given the evidence found, we can imagine the underlying motive. In an official announcement, the state attorney informed that the sentence could not be overlooked, as the accused, aged 26, received a sentence of 44 years. He remarked, "When he is released at 70, who will be waiting for him? Most, if not all, his family members will be gone by then. He won't have a genuine future." Raymond's father also issued a public statement. "My family and I extend our deepest sympathy to the Lays family. I want you to know that Ray has expressed extreme remorse from the beginning. I can't tell you how many times he sobbed uncontrollably, telling me how sorry he is. Our hearts are broken. It doesn't make any sense to us. This is not the Ray we know." On September 26, 2009, Annie Lee's wake was held. Jonathan, her fiancé, was visibly shaken and struggled to communicate with people. Annie's mother, Vivian, tearfully shared memories about her daughter and read a poem she had written in Vietnamese. Annie's brother, Chris Lay, provided the translation. Finally, she said, "The most wonderful gift that God sent me was taken from me in a very painful way. I feel like my soul is being ripped apart. Rest in peace. Goodbye, my daughter." We express our deepest sympathies to the victim's family. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. Also, add your opinion in our comments. Thank you very much. I will see you in the next case.